What a headshot! What a head!
How's it, guys? This is Dayvy, FPL, and welcome back to the Fantasy Premier League video here on my channel. Now in this video, I'll be taking you through my goalkeeper review, the third installment in our positional review preseason series. So if you guys haven't checked out the defenders and the forwards, we obviously have one position left after this, and that's going to be the midfielders. But I'd recommend that you guys go check out those previous two videos, as I think they're super useful as well. Now the goalkeepers are going to be third, not last. If I put them last, probably would have been the same order that most people pick their drafts. Unfortunately, the goalkeepers never get the attention that they deserve. So they might not be the most popular position, but I would say they're the most integral. They do provide the best value in the game of any position, but we probably spent the least amount of time choosing which one between the sticks. So this video won't be the longest video in the world. Unfortunately, there's a lot of stats to kind of look over. It's not like we're going over the XG and the XA of any goalkeeper, but there are a few interesting insights that you guys can gauge, and hopefully by the end of this, you guys choose the goalkeeper for your drafts. So that being said, sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. So like with all our positional reviews, I'm going to start off with the classic points versus price debate. Now don't worry, there's no kind of per game averages versus per 90-minute averages, as theoretically most of your goalkeepers should be playing the full game. So when you do kind of graph the per 90-minute points as well as the price tag, you guys can see with that linear regression line which kind of goalkeepers are good value and who are bad value, and this would be the points from last season. So this season, FPL has really priced the goalkeepers quite interestingly. We have a cap at 5.5, and most of our goalkeepers are actually around that 5.0 bracket, with a few choices at 4.5. Now the one player that you probably have noticed is a player with the super high points per 90 minutes, and that's going to be Kelleher. But unfortunately, this is him at Liverpool last season. So when Alisson got injured, there was a few games, I think around 10 games, that Kelleher was between the sticks. And with that clean sheet at Liverpool, he really did rack up the points. But as you guys will know, he has actually left Liverpool and joined Brentford. And because Flecken's left the league, I've replaced Flecken with Kelleher's star. So what this basically just shows you is Flecken's performance last season. Now will Kelleher replace Flecken in the same manner? Who kind of knows? But when you look at Flecken's performance from last season, he's definitely the best consistent 4.5. Now the reason I did this was the ownership of Kelleher is super high. I also want to apologize if I am pronouncing that slightly differently to how you've been hearing it, but you guys know who I'm talking about. But definitely the most popular 4.5 at the moment, so I wanted to speak to you guys that have selected him. I personally have him in my latest draft. Just seems like the 4.5 of choice. Now Kepa obviously not at Bournemouth anymore, he has left to Arsenal, but Petrovic could be replaced by Kepa if he has a similar performance, and I'd agree that he's probably the second best 4.5. So now where the dilemma kind of comes in, are we actually looking at a set and forget 5.0 keeper this season, or should we push it to 5.5 and go for someone like a Pickford or an Alisson? Now for me at the moment, this graph kind of reads my thoughts quite well. I think Sals and Sanchez are probably where you'll be looking at for your goalkeeper of choice, as you can probably cover that Everton defensive threat with Defcon Tarkowski. Now what some people have kind of mentioned was, has Thomas Frank moving to Spurs changed their defense quite a bit? You guys can see Vicario is super low there, and that's because that Spurs defense was simply terrible, but I wouldn't bank on him suddenly becoming a great option. Now when you guys do look at that premium bracket, unfortunately Raya is just below the other three. And let's give some love to Edison, as he usually gets a lot of hate. He had a great end to this season and I did own him. So a lot can actually be gauged from this points per 90 minutes. Can Kelleher up the performance of Flecken from last season, or is a safer Sal Sanchez at 5.0 the ones to look at? Now the one team I want to focus on actually is going to be Newcastle, because Dubravka was on this graph, but at 4.0 million, he kind of was a little bit of an outlier. Great stats last season. With Nick Pope, Ramsdale, that whole situation, I'm pretty sure whoever starts for Newcastle will be 5.0 million. I just wanted to touch on that because I have seen some people talking about Dubravka at 4.0 million. At the moment, not too many options at that minimum price bracket. So let's now turn our attention. We've seen the points per kind of 90 minutes or points per game, however you guys want to say it. Now with goalkeepers, there are two fundamental portions of their points. The first one's going to be the clean sheets. Now clean sheets are slightly more reliable than saves. You generally want to go for a team that has good kind of expected clean sheets. So let's look at last season in terms of price per clean sheets 90 minutes. Now we spoke about Keller. You can see that when he was featuring for Liverpool, they had some great defensive performance, and this kind of explains why his points per 90 minutes was so high. Otherwise, you guys can see your top teams, Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool, even Nottingham Forest, putting up some pretty respectable numbers. Now the one player that you probably will notice on the bottom side of things is going to be Flecken, or Keller Star as we've been calling him. This kind of tells you that those Brentford clean sheets weren't flowing, and that just tells you that Flecken was a great shot stopper. So this graph does paint the picture slightly easier, but let's now take a deeper dive into the kind of XG against, and let's compare that to the actual points they scored last season. So what this is going to tell us is how much of the kind of goalkeeper's performance was down to those clean sheets, and also gives us an indication into the bonus point metric. So what you probably do expect here is a little bit of a proportional relationship between the XG against and the points scored. Just a reminder, the x-axis here is actually from biggest to smallest. The least amount of XG against is what you require. That's basically a proxy for clean sheet expectation. And this is where we kind of see the fact that Keller-style Flecken saved a ton of shots. What this also does tell you is that Keller, when he was at Liverpool, was a pretty good shot stopper. He actually did face more XG against than Alisson did, but came out producing better FPL points. In the comparison between Sanchez and Sels, I'm also leaning towards a bit more Sanchez here, as they had a lower XG against, which just shows that Chelsea had the better defense than Nottingham Forest. Everton's defense also looking pretty solid there with Pickford, but he is more expensive at 5.5. And once again, the color combinations here are going to be 4.5s in green, mid-range options or 5.0s in orange, and your 5.5s in red. In terms of your goalkeepers, as mentioned, definitely do want to prioritize their clean sheets, unless you want to go super cheap and just rely on saves. And that's what Flecken was last season. So to showcase that even further, this is probably the last graph we're going to show. We've just spoken about the kind of clean sheet proportion. Now let's talk about that final save proportion. Now before we go into the saves, I want to just pause here and tell you guys about a big bonus point change for the goalkeepers. And that's an extra bonus point if the shot was in the box. So this does prioritize those shots in the box saves. I do agree those are probably worth more than a shot outside the box. But the reason I haven't delved too deep into this is that it's kind of a positive and a negative. Usually what we like from goalkeepers is if their team faces a bunch of shots outside the box, as those are theoretically easier to save and less likely to score. But if your goalkeeper now is facing a ton of more shots in the box, they might concede one of those chances and therefore lose their clean sheet. So while it's a positive that they're going to get extra bonus points, I wouldn't prioritize shots in the box as they are far more dangerous. And that's why general just saves per 90 minutes is going to fit this kind of insight. I don't know if you guys agree with me on that one, but as mentioned, it's a pro and a con. So let's just go over saves per 90 minutes. So on the x-axis, we're going to still be looking at that clean sheet threat or XG against. And on the left-hand side or the y-axis, it's going to be saves per 90 minutes. And this is going to show the shot stopping ability of your goalkeepers. So top left-hand side, we already knew this, but Flecken was an absolute beast in net and saved Brentford a ton of goals. So will Keller kind of replace that? Don't exactly know. He faced more XG but had a similar save percentage to Alisson, whereas Ray and Edison faced hardly any shots. Like with the previous graph, you probably want to meet somewhere in the middle. You want a goalkeeper that's going to get you those saves, hopefully more than that 3 threshold, but still racking up a low amount of XG against. That's why for me, the closest players there in terms of these two metrics are that middle bracket. Unfortunately, Sanchez is just below that 3 average saves per 90 minutes. I would still classify him though as a great option as well as Pickford, but as mentioned, 0.5 price difference there. All those other goalkeepers in that bracket are still pretty decent though. Whoever signs for Newcastle should be pretty okay, as well as Sels. And if Petrovic is a good replacement for Kepa, he could be the one to look at 4.5. I do worry about that Brentford defense if you were to go for the popular owned Keller. They've lost a lot of players in their starting 11, and if he doesn't perform as well as Flecken between the sticks, there might not be that many points flowing his way. So my conclusion at the moment is I actually do really like Sanchez in this bracket. He gets an average amount of saves, which should give him an occasional bonus, and his XG against is also looking pretty good. I do expect Chelsea to continue to flow along with that defensive department, and I'd probably prefer Sanchez and an outfield Everton defender than Pickford and an outfield Chelsea one. Otherwise, Nottingham Forest with sells, but there could be some question marks about their defense as well. In the comments down below, let me know what your thoughts are on this graphic. Also, let me know who's your starting goalkeeper at the moment. I would probably recommend going for a cheaper goalkeeper as your second. I'm not the biggest fan of rotation. The transfer window is still open, though there could be the occasional move which could be quite exciting. Let me know if there's anyone that you guys are looking out for. Make sure your notifications are turned on for that midfielder review dropping in a few days' time. I promise it's going to be an absolute banger. But this is basically going to wrap up the video, guys. Hope you guys did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. But for the time being, I'm signing off. It's me, Dayvy FPL, and I'm out. Cheers, bye.